Israel is responsible, one for the other. Like Jews everywhere, the Jewish people of Youngstown, since as far back as their beginnings around the time of the Civil War, have been dedicated to this slogan of mutual support, to the concept of taking care of our own.
It's our mission. We take care of our own people, and we've been doing that for 50 years, and I hope we do it for another 50 more years.
Out of this commitment has evolved a sophisticated, organized community, a network of interrelated facilities and services designed to provide spiritual fulfillment, education, advocacy, welfare, social services, and a recognized presence in the area.
This community has always been way ahead of where you would think a community of this size and this financial strength to have as far as facilities and programs and that kind of thing. I don't think there's anybody in the country our size who has a nursing home and an assisted living facility.
No less binding upon the consciousness of the Jewish community was the biblical commandment, honor thy father and thy mother. During the last half of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th, the extended Jewish family made up the ideal vehicle to honor, to nurture, and to provide affection and security to aging parents and grandparents, all of which was assumed to be part of the normal family life cycle. But as the pace of modern life took over, young Jewish parents found new mobility. The extended family gradually eroded and became obsolete. There was no longer room for the old folks within the framework of the modern nuclear family. The older generation was relegated to living alone in their old dilapidated family homes, in small rented apartments, or even exiled to substandard inadequate rest homes to live out the rest of their lives, deteriorating both physically and emotionally. In 1935, under Clarence J. Strauss's guidance, various Jewish leaders joined together to meet local and global needs by creating the Jewish Federation of Youngstown. Even at this early date, one of their major concerns was the challenge of providing for their aged, to arrange things so that these loved ones could find happiness, dignity, security, and contentment among familiar surroundings and loving people. But at that time, the only reasonable option the Federation could offer was to contract services of existing facilities in Pittsburgh or Cleveland.
And that was about an hour schlep, so to speak. And that created somewhat of a hardship for families, and especially if you talk about winter months and so on. And the community wanted to have its own home for the elderly so that they can take care of them in a dignified, respectful, accessible manner.
There was leadership back in the early 60s that had a vision for how important it is for our elderly that can no longer be independent to be housed in our community. But we were able to have a nice controlled environment and be able to give quality care and compassion.
A study of local senior citizens made in 1957 revealed that practically all of the aging people interviewed expressed a strong desire to remain in Youngstown, among relatives and friends in familiar places. And finally, in 1959, the Federation received a gift of $100,000 from Mrs. Helene Strauss Meyer to be used towards the construction of Youngstown's own modern Jewish home for the aged.
My grandmother discussed with my father, which was her son, and her daughter, who was Jean Einstein. My father was Gerald Meyer, and the daughter was Jean Einstein. What did they think? If she gave money to the Jewish Federation, and if they could match it, she would love to have a Jewish home for the aged built, because she would have liked to have lived there rather than a hospital. Because she knew about the homes for the aged, but there wasn't one she felt she could go to.
Mrs. Meyer was the daughter of the late Isaac Strauss, co-founder of the Strauss-Hirschberg store, and sister of the late Clarence J. Strauss, who founded the Federation in 1935 and remained its president until his death in 1947. She tendered her contribution as a challenge to the community, and under the condition that the community raise the balance needed to complete the project.
Everybody knows about this need. We've needed a place for the elderly for decades. It was recognized for decades. So now we're going to do something about it. We were very lucky that once the idea began, Stanley Ingle gave it a life of its own. He enlisted all the prominent people in this community. He enrolled them, he got them to contribute, And he got the groundswell going. He made it happen. And it still goes on long after Stanley passed away. Stanley's concept, Stanley's idea, Stanley's project keeps moving forward.
The board authorized the appointment of a planning and development committee to explore all aspects related to the realization of the proposed home for the aged.
I was part of the building committee. We had a couple sessions where we didn't all agree on something, but basically it went along very smoothly. And we had a committee that picked the furnishings, and each part of the development was under another committee, and we got along very well. And now 50 years have passed, and I'm here, and my wife's here, and my son is here, and we're thankful for it.
The committee determined that Youngstown's Home for the Aged must not be just another building. It must also be based on compassion and understanding of the diverse problems of the aging. It must be a concrete, realistic affirmation that something worthwhile can be done for men and women of advanced age. A recognition of the fact that they are human beings, requiring a degree of attention beyond that form of sympathy called tolerance.
The community has built and served its elderly with a lot of dignity and decorum, with one word theme running through everything was quality.
We essentially control the quality of our own facility, and people in our community don't have to go to another random facility and take their chances. And this place was built on delivering quality care and compassion.
The committee visualized the new home as a place designed for the care and treatment of the well and the sick. A facility built to meet the needs of the elderly who are able to move around and help themselves to a great extent, but who require continuing care and medical attention. They felt it should be engineered to ease and facilitate the movement of the physically impaired, the infirm, and the wheelchair-bound. That it should be designed to meet the medical needs of its residents, with a centralized nursing station, physical and occupational therapy facilities, and treatment rooms. They wanted it to be completely equipped with recreational and rehabilitation facilities and services to ensure meaningful and dignified living and care.
I believe that this is the biggest project that the Jewish community has ever undertaken. And it continues to be the biggest project, and it keeps going. That ties us all together, all through the home.
On April 21st, 1963, over 200 jubilant members of the local Jewish community gathered on the vacant lot on Gypsy Lane, just a few yards north of the Jewish Center, to break ground for the concrete and brick realization of a long-held dream.
They began to build the home. Then it came time to name it. And the interesting thing is that none of my family ever wanted their names on anything that they donated. My father did different things in the community, and they didn't do that. So when it came to this Heritage Manor, they came up with, why don't we use your initials to give you some recognition? So they used H.M. Heritage Manor for Helene Meyer.
As the building was rising up out of the ground over the next several months, the project leadership was engaged in an intensive search for the most qualified staff to run the institution, seeking out personnel experienced in administration, geriatric medicine, nursing dietetics, therapy, even building maintenance, and augmenting their skills with training in the newest techniques. And the staff to this day, 50 years later, remains dedicated, loving, and highly skilled.
I actually started June 1st of 1975. I'd have to sit here and tell you the residents are the reason why I'm here. It's the love of the residents. It's knowing that you could put a smile on their face. We become their families. They become our families. They know more about our lives because every day you come to work, you know, as my kids grew up, they, you know, what your days off, what did you do, where did you go, you know, so we became part of that family, and You can't leave it. They need us. I love what I do. I love my residents. I always tell everybody they're number one.
March of '78, I started. And when I first came here, I was just looking for a job. But after working here and getting to know the residents, and a lot of them open up to you about different things that go on with, you know, in their lives and stuff. You know, it's how you care for a person. It really is how you take care of them. You know, you're not trying to strip them of their dignity or anything like that. You know, they're really like family. They really are.
I worked here for over 22 years, and I had wonderful volunteers, and the staff that I worked with was extremely supportive, and I just enjoyed my years on staff.
At the same time, the committee was busy recruiting, training, and orienting a near-professional corps of volunteers who would be dedicated to providing their clientele with tender, loving care and adding life to years rather than just years to life. Over the years, these two phrases have developed into the basic watchwords of Heritage Manor, and the volunteers have been woven into the fabric of the home.
My volunteerism at the home is actually a thank you note in the form of action. To me, I mean, I've been here for years, and even when my mother-in-law came and she passed away, like I said, I just keep on coming back. And I wouldn't be coming back if I didn't think it was so special.
I love being with the people. They were really just so wonderful to talk to. They were very interesting. They had such wonderful histories, the residents. They'd tell me about the war that they were in. They'd tell me how they came over to the United States. They'd tell me about their families. And I just loved that aspect of Heritage Manor.
On March 7th, 1965, the community gathered once more, this time to tour the magnificent new building in its first open house. Local clergymen conducted the sanctification of the house ceremony, attaching the mezuzahs to the doorposts. They then proceeded to the chapel, placing the Torah scrolls in the ark and lighting the eternal light.
It opened on March 8th, 1965, and the first resident was Yetta Cruikshank.
With such a beginning, it wasn't long before Heritage Manor had earned a reputation for excellence in all areas, and it soon became a model for other communities seeking to solve their own geriatric problems.
Heritage Manor is the biggest Jewish nursing home in the country for the smallest Jewish community. And it is, in my opinion, and many people who are professionals and volunteers in this community, it's second to none.
Heritage Manor has always excelled in all areas, but one of the highlights has been a focus on programming. Traditional programming from arts and crafts, bingo, and entertainment, along with the celebration of Jewish holidays and Shabbat, lend meaning and excitement to daily living. But as the graying of America continued to grow during the early, middle, and late 70s, so did the graying of Youngstown and its surrounding Jewish communities. By 1980, Heritage Manor was confronted by a growing waiting list for admission. Sharon and Warren were being faced by a critical need for quality nursing home placement for their senior citizens. Conversations among the three Jewish communities led to a conviction that the only solution was to merge the resources of the entire regional population. So on February 25, 1981, the Jewish Federations of Warren, Ohio and Shenango Valley, Pennsylvania, and the Jewish Federation of Youngstown merged into what became known officially as the Youngstown Area Jewish Federation. The same year, the leadership of the new regional federation recognized that time was running out, that 16% of its population was already over 65 and rapidly growing older. So they launched a capital expansion and improvement program for both Heritage Manor and the Jewish Community Center to cope with the new increasing demand. Planning and fundraising began for the $3.5 million project, which among other improvements was to increase the home's capacity from 43 to 72 beds and to add rehabilitation and respite services.
I've seen this institution grow, not only in capacity from 43 to 72 beds, but I've seen it grow in how we're able to take care of our residents, how we're able to take care of our community.
With those goals in mind, a joint groundbreaking ceremony was held on the grounds of the Jewish Community Center on Sunday, November 22nd, 1981. 2 years later, on Sunday, October 23rd, 1983, a gala open house was held at both buildings. At the same time, a daycare program was contemplated for elderly or handicapped persons who, although currently living in their own homes, could benefit from the protective daytime environment of Heritage Manor. So in 1985, the home became one of the first in the valley to open an adult geriatric daycare program.
My wife developed a brain cancer, did well for many years, and then she started to deteriorate to a point where I could no longer care for her at home. At first, she was coming here for daycare, where Heritage Manor would send a bus to pick her up at the house. She would come here for a few hours, have an enjoyable time, so she told me when she got back.
In September of 1987, another first, the combining of Heritage Manor for the Aging and the JCC's Aleph Bet Daycare Center in an intergenerational program. Heritage Manor was the first Jewish home in the country to house such a program.
My son was one of the first kids. He was 3 years old at the time. And then in 1991, we expanded the daycare center, and it became 6 weeks and up. And my daughter, who was 6 weeks, 3 months at the time, was one of the first kids there.
Over the years, Youngstown's Jewish community continued to age. Today, more than 50% are 65 or older. In the mid-90s, the Federation leadership began to discuss an alternative living arrangement where seniors who were more mobile and active could live independently. That's when Levy Gardens, the assisted living facility located behind Heritage Manor, was born.
We had lots of people, elderly people in the community, who needed an interim place to live, although eventually they may end up here. The objective was that they could live in their own, they could drive, they could do what they want, and they had, the key issue there was ambulation. They had to ambulate at Levy Gardens in order to live there.
Despite the changes and tightening of regulations that pervade the healthcare field, Heritage Manor has continued to grow in service and sensitivity until today, the middle of 2015. Today, the home is recognized nationally as a modern, progressive, quality institution with outreach services and an innovator in its own right, thanks in part to the leadership of Gary Weiss, who's been recognized nationally for his dedication and administrative success.
He's compassionate, he's dedicated, and I challenge you to go to another nursing home and see an administrator that'll roll up his sleeves and help feed a resident that's impaired. That says something about our executive.
And I think Gary did most of the work, and I just followed through for him.
He's very particular about all the things that happen here, and he's an excellent administrator because he knows all the laws related to Medicare, Medicaid, etc., and he's very up to date on what's happening with changes in the home, and there are changes in the home as far as the government is concerned all the time.
I feel privileged to have been associated with the facilities here, because the running theme in our programs, in our services, has been quality, quality, quality. And our board, our volunteers, our staff has been unbelievably committed to the welfare of our elderly, and it takes a real team to make a team, and we've established it here, and hopefully we'll continue to do so in the years ahead.
Over the last 50 years, Heritage Manor has had no lack of strong, dedicated leadership. From Gary Weiss and executive directors before him to the dozens of presidents who have carried the torch, continuing the tradition of compassionate care with the idea that none of us is as strong as all of us.
It was very exciting to be president of the board of directors, and I worked with Gary. I met with him every week, and I was very involved. I was also volunteering here. And I just felt like Heritage Manor was my whole life.
As long as I'm able to, I want to continue to be among this group of people who are extremely dedicated, and I'm happy to be one of them. I consider it an honor to serve, and I hope I'll continue to have that privilege in the years ahead.
This outstanding leadership has helped make the decisions that have moved the home forward, including opening the home to non-Jewish residents. Today the home is open to all faiths needing services, and roughly half of the residents are non-Jewish.
I feel that the Jewish people and the Italian people have one thing in common. They revere the older people. They make sure that their parents are taken care of. And that was a big point with me. Our religion may be a little bit different, but there's only one God.
Heritage Manor focuses on person-centered care. Because of the size, the staff knows all of the residents, their needs, and their loved ones. The average age of today's resident is 88. The oldest is 103. The home continues to be unique in many ways. It's one of the few facilities in the country that houses Jewish family services. The agency has been an integrated service provider since 1991. It's also one of the few facilities in the Mahoning Valley approved by the Veterans Administration to provide care to veterans. And the home provides therapy that is second to none, not only in the valley, but across the country.
It's the best therapy that I could possibly ask for. I had been to other therapies that only made me worse, that didn't care about me, that did not address the problem, and certainly I can't say enough good about them.
They do it at your own pace, but what they do is they work on psychologically on your mind. They get you doing things that you wouldn't think you could do.
Amazing volunteers, dedicated staff, wonderful residents and families, all touched by this home. The Youngstown area Jewish community may be small, but it is mighty, and Heritage Manor is one of its crown jewels.
It is the touchstone of the Youngstown area Jewish community.
The programs and services here are available because of the commitment that one generation made to another more than 50 years ago. Because of that commitment, the home has been able to embrace and care for more than 2,000 people. Our sense of continuity, interwoven with traditions, dictates a renewal of the commitment between this generation and the next to ensure that the home and its services will continue to flourish and serve our grandparents, our parents, and ourselves for another 50 years and beyond.
We're very fortunate to have a facility like this. It's an exceptional place.
Thank you for 50 years worth of taking such wonderful care of the people we love when they were no longer able to take care of themselves.
And for the past 50 years, they have just been a fabulous institution for Youngstown. And I hope in the next 50 years they'll still be here for all of us and anyone else who needs it.
This is an organization that has touched all of the 1,700-odd Jewish people in this general area.
And I want to congratulate the leadership and our staff, who's done a remarkable job in caring for our elderly, and our volunteers for participating, everybody together to make this a place that we can really be proud of and call a home for our Jewish elderly and, for that matter, our general community.
Happy golden anniversary, Heritage Manor.